Altseason's sitting on a bit of a knife edge here, and is May the month that actually tips it for once? Now, the Ethereum BTC chart has bounced a little bit. We're starting to see some signs of life there, and Bitcoin dominance is slowly stalling, but nothing drastic just yet, but it's something to keep an eye on. And the macro side of things are starting to lighten up a little bit, which is positive. Now, if you're waiting, which you should be doing, you just need to keep an eye on a couple of charts, which you should all know by now. Smash the like button if you're quietly stacking while it's quiet, but I don't think it'll be quiet for much longer. Now, something that's a bit random, I know, I'm going to say it. According to data, the US presidential cycle since 1990 has normally been quite weak Q1 and stronger in Q2. That's obviously positive for us. It was a dire Q1 for us in crypto. And also the M2, the liquidity is rising. I don't like talking too much about this. I know a lot of people pin their entire bloody hope on it, but we don't know where the liquidity is going to go into. But if it is rising, that is a good sign to see if money is going to flow into markets. When you compare that as well to the obvious in the room, which is hopefully in the next couple of months, QT will end. Then we're going to get some much needed rate cuts, which I think we'll see where that goes. But it's not going to be huge, it's not going to change things, but it is going to start coming down, probably by the summertime, potentially. But you've also got the macro environment. I mentioned it before. I do feel that things have turned a little bit. The corner has turned, and the Russian gold hasn't carried on forever. The tariffs have kind of settled down a little bit, and I think the absolute utter chaos of Donald Trump coming into power has kind of chilled a little bit, which is always good. Now get your big ladder out, because this is the Ethereum BTC chart. We could be looking at some signs of life here for the first time in a while. And I know we're going from a couple of months ago here, but ultimately, this can't go down forever. And this is the thing. We're on a 6-year support, which is like the same altcoin season set up from 2019. I know, it's mad. If we do bounce, and I openly talk about altcoins and alt seasons, and people get really annoyed when I just say I don't think we're going to go mega berserk, but a bounce will be very, very refreshing and very, very good. When we go into the 3-day time frame or the weekly time frame, even, I look at the 3-day first, you can see we've had a horrendous 12 months. That's kind of obvious. Weekly, you can pan that to an extra. It makes your teeth itch, right? But the reality is here. Wherever this bottoms, now this is the thing. The weekly time frame here is looking it's a bit premature. Don't get me wrong. But that's not a bad candle to be sitting on, and where we could be going of a bit of indecision. Now, again, we could look at the whole sell in May and go away argument, and I understand that. But that argument might actually play into altcoin hands, and I'm going to explain a little bit in more detail in a second. But what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put this Fibonacci a little bit lower, and we could be looking at structure points. Now, I'm just going to say this openly and honestly. This is an old fib. I've only got a couple of levels on it. But the reality is here, if we get a bounce even to the 382 or 44,000 Satoshis, it's going to make a big difference to the entire market. Now, going back a step, and I talked about it just then, what if XYZ happens? What if? But what if, right? The whole fundamentals around this is just going to be because Bitcoin stays still in May, right? And that could be huge. And my other videos, I talked about it. The others.d, which is basically the entire market cap, excluding the top 10 assets, right? This is also starting to show little signs of life that we may well be finding some sort of levels of support. And this level of support goes quite the way back into the prehistoric dinosaur ages, right? Dino coins. So, got to be mindful of that. It won't keep going down forever. It is at a big juicy level. If we get a bounce, as I've alluded to before in previous videos, where we see stuff like this, where it goes a bit of a retracement to resistance levels, it might be relatively nice. And it could all start in May, which is mental. So when we start looking at that, and then we combine it with the fact of some altcoins currently starting to show, again, signs of life, it's very positive. But it's still early. I don't want you all just diving in, because ultimately, even today, Bitcoin dominance is up 0.03%, which is quite small, I know, but it's still going up. And just to give you the basis of this, and I've said it in my previous video, feel free to subscribe, by the way, this is still not showing signs of death. And I say it very openly, don't use this as your one primary indicator, because you'll get wrecked. it needs to come down with conjunction with other things. And we're starting to see some signs of that in other areas, but Bitcoin is still strong. Bitcoin could still lead this. This could still come down a little bit, and also you could still make money. But ultimately, if you're holding heavy in Bitcoin, you might actually work out in a better situation, which sounds baffling. But we are at key levels here. This is a key level of around 65%. When you look at the past, now I hate doing technical analysis and dominance charts only because there's so many other metrics that come alongside it. It's too hard because if Ethereum.d, for example, bounces, which it could, this is again 2019, 2020, historic ugly support, it could create a big spike. That looks like a scared cat. It looks horrendous. I could draw a picture on that. I'm not going to though. So you get the idea. There's so many things that could happen and play out here, but the one thing that could happen, as I've alluded to it, Bitcoin could just stay still and it could allow altcoins to breathe. That could be the biggest thing. When you think about tariffs and all that situation about Trump and going on his holidays, it might well just be like, oh, a calm market might actually allow this to bounce for once. And again, the final point around all of this and the whole situation around this is, what if we go back to those, yellow circles? Sweet, right? What if we go down to these levels? Even better. It's still early. This is how alt seasons technically start. It's a bit chaotic, a bit unloved and a bit under the radar, but you've got to keep your eye on it. And this is why I talk quite openly now on my channel that I'm not invested in them, but I do trade them and I ride the hype and the momentum at certain points. If these certain points come around, you follow the momentum and you go with it. That's the easiest thing you can do currently, because I think the problem with altcoins that we have is we all fall in love with them, don't we? We shouldn't, but we do. And we tend to get a little bit upset when they don't perform or they don't go as high as we think, and we miss the signals to jump out, basically. Now, you're probably kind of all wondering what I'm doing for May, and I'm going to explain it in a little bit more detail. Nothing crazy, though. In my Patreon, I talk quite a lot. I do a journal of what I'm doing. I'm going to be a bit more proactive now, certainly with my trades and stuff. So jump in, link below. It's cheap as out. You get to see exactly what I'm doing, what I'm holding, what I'm not doing, all that kind of good stuff. And you can also get access to other videos. But the thing is, right, with this, I'm keeping my wits about me with Bitcoin, because I do feel that we're going to do something a bit mental with Bitcoin. I've got a funny feeling in my little loin, so to speak, that we're going to pop. And it could catch people out. When we look at the facts of this big move here already, right, we've popped, it's caught people out, and we could be coming back into potentially going to retest these highs and going even higher towards 100k. That could allow altcoins to breathe a bit and get a bit of much needed kind of liquidity coming into them. The thing is, we've got to look at where dominance rejects. We've got to keep an eye on it. We can't just go aping in. Some trends are slowly starting to form, but we need those BTC pairs to run with it to get an even bigger run, because even if Bitcoin runs and say your Chainlink, for example, runs, right? Great. It's looking relatively good. It's bounced off the EMA, whatever. But if this BTC pair of Link does even better, it's going to be even more juicy, which is important. So we need to keep an eye on those rejection zones, and more importantly, what's happened with the BTC pair. If this gets above the EMA and we start trending up, go along on Link, for example. Just to give you a rough example. So yeah, maybe May is the breakdown that we need to allow altcoin momentum to play, which would be good if Bitcoin chills out a little bit and not be too ferocious on the downside. There you go. Short, sharp, sweet. A good update for the month, essentially. Fingers crossed. But we need to keep an eye on it. This isn't happening yet. We need to keep an absolute eye. We'll be watching it like a hawk. And as I say, keep up to date. Like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell button just so you don't miss anything. Because we either reset and it's all back to zero, or money rotates in and we make some money.